Hello and welcome to the Midweek Podcast of First Baptist Sweetwater. I'm Jerry Hendricks. I'm sitting in the room with T. Hamilton, and we're excited about another week of ministry here at First Baptist.
Most definitely.
Lots of stuff is going on. We're in almost completing the first 6 weeks of school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
things are moving quite along at quite a speed, I guess.
Wow, if we're in the first 6 weeks, it's almost done. Then we get second, and then it's Advent. I'm just going to try and work that in every time.
Well, you're doing very well, T. Hey, so I wanted to start today with a question that I actually have given you time to think about. So let me set it up before you give the answer that you know that you're supposed to give.
Okay.
On Sunday, I was working on this. I'd come across this story on a podcast about a school for refugees in Atlanta that started about 25 years ago, and was listening to kind of how they developed and some of the core ideas behind their development. And there's a couple of things that were shared, and I go, so I wonder what the ultimate team sport is. On Sunday, knowing that I was going to share this illustration, having to do more with grades and how they each report their grades to their classmates. But I asked a group of men who were in our welcome center having coffee and mostly through with their banter. I said, gentlemen, what is the ultimate team sport? And you were in that room.
I was.
And so you and I haven't talked about it, have we?
We haven't.
Yeah. So have you come to a different conclusion?
No, I'm going to stick with my original one, but I did have a funny one. Glenn Harrison and I talked about it on the way up, and we're pretty sure that curling would be pretty tough to do on your own. Can you imagine having to line yourself up and then sweep and tell yourself left and right? That'd be a tough one to be by yourself, but that was just a fun one that we thought about. I'm going to stick with water polo or, like you said, soccer. No. That water polo would be tough by yourself or impossible, but soccer, 90 minutes? My sister-in-law played soccer. She would say that it's definitely that.
Well, it would. So the question was phrased strategically that it had to be the ultimate team sport, and the thing that captured me, and I've been a bit antagonistic towards sports that were not American.
Right.
In other words, an international sport of maybe a sport that was more popular around the world than any other sports that we have.
The real, truly legitimate football.
Yes, correct.
Because you actually use your foot on the ball.
And so, but as the story developed, that she took a wrong turn into a neighborhood and saw these kids playing soccer with a poor soccer ball and having a good time, and she got out and had a soccer ball in her car and started kicking the ball around with them, and then eventually became a coach for that, or that she developed a team, and then it moved into education. But one of the things that she said that got my attention was she didn't refer to soccer as the ultimate team sport. She just said that it is a team sport, that it's hard to be carried by any individual, like a basketball team and a LeBron James, or a football team and Tom Brady. But I know there are soccer stars, and they're compensated quite well.
There's not very many of them, though.
But one of the things she said was that once the team takes the field, the team has to work out its own problems because the coach can't call a timeout.
Right.
She said that, I think she said it this way, that it's the only sport where the coach doesn't call a timeout. No, I guess they do play two halves, correct?
They do, two halves,
so
and then there's stoppage time,
yeah.
So someone's injured or the ball's out or something, but the refs keep that. I think there is, and I might be thinking hockey, I think there's like one timeout that you can use, but it's always at the very end. But that might just be hockey, which you don't think about hockey having a timeout either. Well,
the image was that the team has to learn how to work it out, and so they got
to communicate.
Right. They have to figure things out on the field, as on the fly, as they're going, as they're trying to set up their style or what their game plan is. But so her just referring to, she uses soccer as an influence in their school, which is interesting in and of itself. There's a long story that goes with that. I may use a part of that Sunday because I thought it was intriguing how they went about that. But her whole approach to the system that they have in their school is based on team and how a team functions best. So turn the corner and we're looking at Paul talking to Corinthians, the people that probably don't epitomize teamwork.
Right.
A bit of a dysfunctional group. And he's trying to bring them all together to centralize how the church can function best. And he talks about giftedness. And so Sunday, even though that was, I didn't go short on my time, but there's a lot you can say within those 10 or 11 verses when it talks about the gifts. So I took off a slice to try to say what I felt like would help us to establish a bit of a foundation for that. But then next week he talks about how the body of Christ functions together. So that's where you have the team idea. I think that we can't be envious of one another for the gifts or the position that a person has, but the team works together for the good of the church. So anyways, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and I liked what you said, because a lot of times we think, oh, that's my gift and that's it. But you point out, no, God can still give you other gifts as you grow and as you use them for God and for God's kingdom. So the wisdom example, a 13-year-old, and God's given me wisdom. Well, this isn't quite a Solomon thing.
Well, and that's something that I really had not thought a lot about previously in my life. I knew the other thing that I not thought about that a lot, that some of those gifts cannot be developed, or the gift of knowledge and be given and just developed immediately. That they're going to occur over time. And I was pretty much still captured by Paul's encouragement to Timothy to stir up those gifts. That he saw something in Timothy, and he did refer to him at one point as being timid. So maybe he realized that Timothy had these characteristics. They just weren't being utilized to in their fullest extent. And so the way he's described it was, stir up those gifts, fan those gifts into flame. And some of those, I think, some of our realization as we grow older in the faith and working with our giftedness, I think it has to come through that. I use the word agitation, constant trying to figure out and even putting ourselves in uncomfortable positions to clarify, well, that's not a gifted area for me. That's not where I'm going to thrive, and others aren't going to thrive either if I'm in this position or have this role. But I do like looking at that and considering that. And the other thing, I think through my explanation of my gift, one of my gifts, which is I create a culture for good things to happen. That's what I decided, or how I defined it on Sunday. But that's to say that the gifts are not limited to those that are listed in those passages that were in our program. That there's gifts that extend beyond that. And so that's why I think it takes more intention on a believer's part to discover those gifts and then find out how they can function. And you think about this, it's going to vary from church to church also, I think.
Right. We used the illustration last week about the Play-Doh and the body parts, and talked about how whenever we do that, we talk about the missing pieces that are on there, that there's churches that have those gaps. And you've got to think about, well, how do you meet those needs, or how do you address those? Or is there someone you need to say, I see that in you also? You talked about that Sunday, that sometimes we won't say no for somebody because we see that, and we won't ask them unless we think they can do it. And so, yeah.
Well, and there's like, you look at when we were at Crosspoint together, when you're in a church start, the needs are so different there than what they are in a church like ours now. And so, contextually it's going to change. Culturally it could change based on where a church is located geographically, either within a large city or in other countries.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a very broad subject and a broad thought, but it's something that is important in the life of the church. But we really have to own up to our responsibility of discovering and implementing those gifts in the life of the church.
Right. Because the church needs your gifts to be used.
Right.
Because if it's someone else trying to fill that spot that maybe doesn't have that gift, like you talked about, it's not going to be near as effective.
Right. You know, one of the, we've known some folks, you and I, who have a gift of food.
Oh, yeah.
But that becomes a ministry, a vehicle of ministry for them, a way for them to serve.
Right.
And I think that's just another example that, you know, when the church, if there's that giftedness in the church, and somehow that's not being utilized, then the church body is not going to be as healthy as it could be if it was positioned well and put in a place of service.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot to discover there. It's one of those things where we'd want it to be a part of the deep DNA of the church, and I think we've made improvements there. But even in talking about volunteering and making that an announcement, it's still I think we have to achieve a higher level of understanding what that really means.
Right.
Because we're not just trying to get things done. We're really trying to get people to find those places of service and ways to serve.
And you'll never know unless you try. When you talk about experimenting, that, you know, maybe that's a gift you have, and you might try something and be like, nope, definitely not a gift I have.
Right.
Definitely not.
Yeah. And that's where I think the church doesn't want to press in and try to make you something that you're not.
Right.
There's some that I think, and I didn't say this Sunday, but it doesn't go without saying that there's things that need to be done that you don't have to have a gift to do.
Right.
And those things are different than what we're really talking about.
Right.
And really, I think these next 10 verses help get us complete that framework as far as gifts working in the life of the church. But you don't want to forget some of those things too. Right. That, you know, someone's got to turn on the lights and lock the doors when we leave and different things like bulbs. That. Yeah. So, anyways, a good start to our series. Some good thoughts from all around our activities on Sunday. Keep thinking about maybe your thoughts on the ultimate team sport.
You know, our friend Casey Cockrell, he would probably say Quidditch from his Hogwarts love for Harry Potter. We'll see pretty quickly if he listens to this or not.
Okay, that was so. As we're winding this thing down, that was really random, and you threw me off. So,
yeah, good job.
But yes, good job, T.
Casey loves Harry Potter. Not really.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for letting us be a part of your midweek. We enjoy this conversation with one another and with you. Look forward to hearing from you, and as we move forward through this series. We'll continue our series this Sunday at 10:30. Look forward to seeing you.
See you then.